what Prime Minister Modi has put out on social media. He said, landed in Israel. I'm extremely honored to be received by Prime Minister Netanyahu and Mrs. Netanyahu at the airport. I look forward to engaging in bilateral discussions and fruitful outcomes that strengthen the India-Israel friendship. Sorry I interrupted you, but that's Prime Minister's quote right now. So that is where things at with those two leaders having a tete-a-tete, a small session of exchange, a bit informal there, soon after Prime Minister Modi landed in Tel Aviv, and now, of course, other engagements will also ensue.
Yes, and the highlight of the day will be Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address at the Knesset. Yes, Dr. Alvite, you may continue on the point that you were mentioning.
Yeah, I was emphasizing on the likelihood of getting into more partnerships, particularly in the drone sector.
Yes.
The Israelis are one of the most advanced, manufacturers and exporters of drones in the world, particularly what we call the UAVs in the earlier time. And looking at the manner in which we had come under attack from our neighborhood before the Operation Sindoor and during the Operation Sindoor, I think there would be a fair degree of requirement to get into more joint collaborations in this particular sector. So even if we do not have any announcements during the visit, the ongoing visit, this is going to be one area which we will likely to see more engagements. We already have seen DRDO and IAI, Israel Aerospace Industries, and other Rafael and Elbit systems cooperating in various platforms for various defense items. So one area which will likely be getting more impetus is in the air defense system. And this is something which the Israelis also would want to do, looking at the manner in which they also have come under lots of missiles and drone attacks in the last 1.5 years' time from Iran. So one potential area is the UAV or drones and long-range anti-defense system. They already have quite a lot of systems which would be of an interest to us. For some time, they were in fact wanting us to choose, items like Iron Dome, but we also need to see the applicability of these systems in our Indian context. But the barrage of drones that we had to encounter during the Operation Sindoor.
Yes,
I think this will open up some areas for cooperation, particularly in this.
Yes, in fact,
what Prime Minister Modi had announced, in fact, on the 79th Independence Day in his speech last year was a Mission Sudarshan Chakra,
yes,
where it talked about a multi-layered AI-enabled networked air defense shield, and this is to be put together by 2035. To what extent, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, do you think Israel could be a contributor there? We will not exactly lift the Iron Dome and install it in India, but there can be a lot of complementarities and overlaps
the possibility of incorporating certain elements from the Iron Dome into our indigenous air defense shield, Sudarshan Chakra.
Well, the Indian side has made considerable progress of its own in these systems, in developing our air defense systems. And it's been recognized that it has to be multi-layered. It also has to have very definite focus on the kind of attack that it is facing, whether it is ballistic missiles, guided missiles, aircraft-launched missiles, or drones, which could be swarms, or it could be targeted towards carrying particular kinds of weapon systems. And our original basis was on a Russian platform, as you know. So we have a Russian platform which we use, and in addition to that, we have also developed a very sophisticated range of air defense networks, including some of our old L-70s, which have been repurposed to deal with drones. And so, given this, we find that there are certain elements of the THAAD and Iron Dome ideas, which are the THAAD being the American system. And so there are certain elements which actually do provide effective cover. And the Sudarshan Chakra will basically provide a much broader ambit of that. And today's kind of air defense is not just a defensive system, but can also be activated for an offensive capability. And I think that's what we will see. There's been a fair amount of discussion between the specialists on this particular front, and I would expect that there would be some outcomes during this visit, at which the principals will obviously discuss this very crucial idea. The nature of war has changed, and therefore the war theories and gaming that you need to do to prepare for the war in the cyber era is something that is going to be very important. One of the areas that we will be looking for closer collaboration will be about the use of cyber technologies in cyberspace, how we can connect with our space-based assets, both in terms of reconnaissance and surveillance, as well as in terms of location and directional planning for these purposes. And as you know, the Israelis have also done some good work in this area, and there would be complementarities between our systems. We are already working on some of these with our partners in Russia and the French side. So, it's like a combination. And the greatness of the collaborations that India is able to achieve is that because we have certain inherent capabilities of our own, which are unique to our system, we are able to actually pinpoint and get that part of that technology or that requirement from those who may be niche leaders. In fact, one of the things that I do believe in this particular partnership is that we will be looking at niche technologies, which will be able to plug in to the overall system that we are looking at. So it's not necessarily a full systems approach of buying an entire system or selling an entire system, but those niche technologies. And this is something that you will find is there not only in the defense area, which of course it is very significant, but also in a lot of our other sustainability development efforts that we do. We look at this kind of an approach in our relation with Israel.
All right, now we have Benjamin Netanyahu tweeting on social media platform X, in fact, responding to the tweet by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And I quote him here, "It's a great honor to welcome you to Israel, Prime Minister Modi. Aapka swagat hai, you are welcome." So the two leaders exchanging the tweets here. Dr. Alvite, coming back to our discussion, do significant opportunities also exist for India and Israel in terms of collaboration in the fields of AI, cybersecurity and high-tech manufacturing? And specifically, could the co-development of AI be a possible outcome in this visit of the Indian Prime Minister?
I think that that is also one of the most important areas where we are expected to see some sort of progress. We have been talking about, Ambassador Sir has already mentioned about cybersecurity component of this relationship. And this has stemmed from the fact that, some of the, particularly if you look at during the 2014, 15, 16, during the heights of activities carried out by groups like ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, where they use very effectively the cyber medium to promote their propaganda and recruit, and that also has given some sort of a food for thought to the counterparts of both the countries to engage more in this field. And at this juncture, when we have a good amount of cyber warfare and cyber attacks trying to intrude into your data, steal your data, and disrupt your capabilities, I think this will be a significant. There will be a significant discussion during this visit, and also with AI. We just have concluded successfully the AI Impact Summit, and that has been received very favorably by the international leaders. And looking at the way, and we also would need to partner with a country like Israel, known for its own startups and known for its own advancements in this field, to have a partnership with a country like Israel, be it in the traditional security areas or in the non-security areas for medical purposes, for academic research, for climate change domain. I think this is going to be one area which will have some very significant, or which will be high on the agenda of discussion during the next 1.5 days visit.
All right, and Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, in terms of the kind of opportunities that India is looking for in terms of mobility of people, jobs abroad as well, what kind of scope is there for Indians to work in Israel in different industries, especially in high-tech areas where Indian professionals are valued to a large extent?
Well, we already have a mobility partnership
Yes.
understanding with the Israeli side, and there are a very large number of Indians who live and work in Israel. Many of them are in the caregivers, construction, agriculture side, and we'd also been very kind of helpful when after the October 7 incidents, when a lot of the Palestinians who used to originally work had to be pulled off their assignments within Israel. We were very helpful to the Israelis in providing Indian workers at that point of time to conduct many of these crucial aspects. But I think the crux of the partnership in mobility, as it is developing, will really move towards the more high-tech variety. There is a very large number of students who go from India to Israel. Most of them are in the STEM area, and we've met many of them in some of the premier institutes, universities in Israel. We have a collaborative framework between the two sides, which combines high-tech with innovation. And we have these hackathons, which we conduct periodically, in which we commission projects, and then we put them into these innovation labs between the two sides. So there is, a growing framework which is already there, and I'm sure what will happen over time, because this has been a very useful experience for the two of us, is that this will only expand in terms of its scope as well as in terms of fine-tuning the kind of particular projects that you need to do. And I do dare say that a lot of this will be in the days to come in many of these security domains, because the range of collaboration that is needed in cyberspace as compared to the physical space, that cyberspace collaboration will need to increase. And we do have very, very strong partners across the world. And I think, as was mentioned as well, the AI Impact Summit was one of those examples where we were able to bring together these great ideas. But with Israel in particular, this is going to be something that is going to be an ahead of the curve kind of an engagement. And we will see even more partnerships emerge. So we have these labs which will be supported. We will have specific programs that our defense and security people will identify. And there is more targeted approach today already on some of these areas, which will deepen further.
All right. India and Israel are also expected to discuss the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor IMEC initiative during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit. Dr. Alvite, could you tell us something about this initiative and the aspects that would likely come up in the discussion between the two leaders?
This was, I think, a very ambitious project which was announced just, I think, during our G20 meeting in 2023. Unfortunately, we had a war breaking out after a week or 10 days, following the announcement of this. But I must tell the viewers that there are lots of strong intent still being shown by the countries which are part of this arrangement to really see the light of the day. This was, being seen during some of the discussions which we already have, say during platforms like Raisina Dialogue, when the Greek Prime Minister talked very fondly about their participation in this corridor project. And at the same time, countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia now, despite their little bit of their tensions in the air, are still being very vocal about this sort of a partnership, even though we do not have many reports coming out in the public domain. But somewhere deep within, these countries are also actually acknowledging the importance of this sort of a project, which we are a part of, the IMEC project. This will, I think, figure very prominently during the discussion of building this or promoting this sort of a connectivity projects, both on maritime as well as on the ground. So this is something which we would need to look at in the times ahead. European countries are pretty, charged up about this. You have the French Prime Minister in one of the visits of our Prime Minister to France a year and a half ago. Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Modi talk about this project. So there are strong intents, and it is just that the regional dynamics have somehow slowed down the progress. Opposite to what we had anticipated earlier. But I think in the times to come, there would be some visibility of more progress in this field. But again, the discussion will be very much there of how to get more visibility and results on the ground.
Right. Ambassador Sanjay Bhatia, again, it comes down to stability in the region, which is a key concern, something that India has always espoused, that all issues of conflict, of differences should be sorted out with talks. And you do have, in the context of Iran, talks in Geneva, but then you have the Armada situation, the build-up of the Americans there as well. And even Israel has also been using very aggressive language, and Iran too, in turn, has been reciprocating. So, to what extent do you think issues like these might be part of the conversation, the tete-a-tete that Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu had just a short while back, and how would it really inform and structure their formal discussions as well?
That's a very significant point, because as my colleague just pointed out, the IMEC was a truly wonderful effort, which was forward-oriented, futuristic, and in some ways it was trying to plug into the potential of Israel to the rest of the neighborhood. But it didn't work till now. We have done a lot of homework in trying to prepare for it, but it's not off the ground as it should have. And so this particular pause has given us the time to reflect on this and to understand the situation much better. And you rightly said that the question that is really uppermost and we need to address is the question of peace and stability. We must have a situation where processes which are forward-looking, which are meant for citizen advancement, the advancement of their aspirations, are not held to the by these incidents of violence or of war or things that destabilize the regional situation. So we do need to put much greater emphasis on this, and this is one of the things that I think Prime Minister will have form out in his conversations with Mr. Netanyahu. Because when we worked with the relations with Israel, we, in a sense, were able to have an independent stance regarding our relations with Israel and our relations with Palestine. And of course, there's a broader area that is also involved. But on these two, we need to understand that, the two will have to kind of go somewhat in hand. And there is a lot of effort that is required on the part of the Israelis and the Palestinians to work for peace between the two of them. And unless that happens, many other things in the region and beyond will be held hostage. And that need not be the case. And we know that that is not the intention of the Israeli side either. So we hope that what will happen is that the good understanding that we have on the bilateral level between India and Israel, the very strong personal chemistry that is there between Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Netanyahu, will translate into some sort of an understanding which is of a broader geographic nature of about how we bring about stability in that relationship. And in that, I think, what Prime Minister Netanyahu had referred to about the hexagon is kind of relevant and related, because he has his kind of concerns about various issues, about the various prick points on regional front, which he wants to address and which he wants to have understanding of various parties. Given the very strong partnership that we have with many of these other players, there is a role for India in playing and trying to bring about greater regional stability. And this is something that I would expect that would be discussed. I'm not sure if many of that would be announced at the end of the day, because this is something that will require very careful and delicate preparations, and we don't need to be very loud about it. But we'll have to address this particular issue. Once we do that, once we have that reality of a certain level of peace between Israel and Palestine, the rest of it will fall in place. And this kind of perpetual war that is ongoing has its manifestation in other parts. Today, for instance, we are extremely worried about the development that is there off the coast of Iran, and whether that will blow up into another kind of confrontation. And we don't need that, because it's not good for the region, it's not good for us. And therefore, we must also work towards trying to bring that about so that there's both sides have to have this understanding that they have peace and stability. And only once you have that can you have the next step of stability and prosperity.
And Dr. Nithujam, if you talk about Iran, we have to also talk about what's happening in terms of taking the resolution process in Gaza forward through the Board of Peace, and then the subsequent step of the disarmament of the Hamas, which so far hasn't taken place. Do you feel that all these issues need to make some discernible progress as well to take matters forward towards a direction of a constructive peace in the region?
Yeah, I think the peace that has been announced between Israel and Hamas is very delicate. We have seen that in the last few years, the kind of rhetorics and the statements coming from the leaders of both sides. Rightly mentioned by Ambassador Sir that peace and stability would really determine some of the future courses of actions in the times to come. Whatever agreements or whatever discussions that we have will largely be determined, again, how much stable the Middle East is. When we look at the Board of Peace or the ceasefire agreements or some of the actions being taken by Hamas or any other non-state actors, these are very, very important triggers that we still have. I think all of us have to be cognizant of the fact that the Middle East is, again, still a ticking bomb. We have seen the uncertainty about what the US is going to do or how the Iranians are going to retaliate should there be any attack by the Americans against Iran. So many of these processes which are in place, which have been signed on paper and principle, agreed on principle, have to see a lot more actions on the ground. So unless and until we have those actions, some concrete or tangible results, it will also be a little difficult to predict that the stability of West Asia or Middle East, one may say. So it's very important that we discuss these things very minutely, as mentioned by Ambassador, so that these things might not come out in the public, but could have some sort of a space in the discussions that we are going to have. And again, both the sides, Israelis or the Indian leadership, very well know the dynamics of the security or the uncertainty that looms large in the region. Yes. And they very well know that whatever discussions, whatever agreements that we might be signing in the next 1.5 days, all this would be futile if things do not take up as we anticipate. So these discussions will take place, and it remains to be seen because the peace agreement has been signed only in the last few months. So we would need to give some more time to see whether the actors involved in these agreements and principles really look forward to actualizing the agreements that have been signed on paper.
So, gentlemen, as we are discussing the prevalent instability in West Asia, new affiliations are being shaped in the region, and they are very much public. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia wrapped up a bilateral defense agreement. Shehbaz Sharif is, in fact, in Qatar as we speak. And India, UAE are inching together towards strategic alignment. So, does this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Israel signal a reaffirmation of the Israel-India-UAE strategic alignment at a time when everybody is trying to figure out their affiliations in West Asia.
And you have to factor in the UAE and Saudi Arabia dynamics in this as well, which is right now a bit wobbly.
And if you could, I know it's so many players here, the role of Qatar as well.
So I think I would not see the visit of Prime Minister Modi in that context. I don't think India is really seeking to kind of say this side or the other, because India is one country that is uniquely placed to be on all sides. We have a strategic partnership with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We have very strong relations with Iran. We have growing ties with Qatar. Some of the countries that you mentioned. I see the West Asian region as one in which there are three, so to say, peripheral players who are extremely important. One of them is an Arab country and a strategic partner of ours, which is Egypt. The other two are not Arabs, Iran and Turkey. Both of which are extremely important for the region. And I think what we need to understand is that in any balance of stability that we try to have in this region, these three players will have to be in sync, because otherwise you will have tendencies that will be led either by these, or it could be one of these countries within the Gulf states. Sometimes, smaller Gulf states can also play a very leading role. Which would tend to destabilize the process. The process that was begun, and I agree, I think IMEC, I2U2 are some of these movements that are in line with the kind of understanding that was coming about with the Abraham Accords. And there was this rapprochement in which Arab countries were saying that we are in alignment with the future that Israel is trying to do, the kind of technology, the kind of sustainable development that they are practicing, and this can be good for all our citizens. And when you look at Gen Z in all these countries, which we sometimes call as Arab Street, their aspirations have to be met. Otherwise, you will have big problems. And I think everybody recognizes that. But if they're to play games, then I think there will be difficulties that will come about. I don't think the Pakistan factor is very serious. It has such serious issues within its own boundaries that it cannot probably play a very significant role. But it can have mischief value, and I think that's why it needs to be monitored. I do not see Prime Minister's visit as anything that's got to do with, the current level of differences between Saudi and the Emirates. We have always advocated and will continue to have very, very strong partnership with both of them. I see the region as having great potential, and I think Prime Minister will probably articulate that as well, in which we would wish to leverage our own bilateral ties towards bringing about regional good. Let us not forget that at the turn of the previous century, more than 100 years ago, when the First World War was taking place and the Ottomans were moved from that particular area as part of the British Army, it was Indian troops that led the charge and brought about peace in that area. So we have been in that region. Till about the 1960s, the Indian rupee was the dominant currency in large parts of the Gulf. And today, again, we are in a situation where this entire region is what we call our extended neighborhood. And when you call a region an extended neighborhood, it signifies the very strong bonds, which are not just economic, which are not just cultural, but civilizational, and also looking ahead to the future. And that's where I think we can see these synergies come about. So I do hope that, this particular idea will see merit. Sometime back, there was a visit, if you recall, of the Arab League foreign ministers to India, maybe just a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And that was, again, very significant because the uniform voice that we heard from all the Arab leaders was one in which they wanted peace and they wanted India to play a role. And I think this is the time.
All right. Well, let's also tell you a little bit more about Prime Minister Modi's two-day state visit as to its different components, elements. Well, what will happen is that in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Modi will be visiting the historic Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum. The Prime Minister will be accompanied by his counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Yad Vashem Chairman, Dani Dayan. Now, according to the center, the visit will include a tour of the Book of Names, a monumental installation containing the names of 4.8 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and a memorial ceremony in the Hall of Remembrance.
Yes, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also sign the Yad Vashem guest book. This is what is lined in his itinerary for tomorrow. Our correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh visited the museum earlier.
We are at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. This is the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. It commemorates the memory, the legacy of some 6 million Jews who perished during the Nazi genocide. During his visit to Israel, Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be paying a visit to the center to pay his respects. Roisa Altman, born 1870, Czechoslovakia, murdered in Auschwitz camp. This is the monumental book of names. It documents the names of inconceivable number of Holocaust victims. It keeps their names, the year they were born, the place where they grew up, and if the information is available, the place where they were murdered. The center also has an art gallery that carries art from the times of the Holocaust. All of this put together creates a living memory of the victims and a promise that such a Holocaust will never happen again. I have with me here Lily Mattis from the United States. She is one of the many people who have memories of their family members being taken during the Nazi Holocaust. Ma'am, if you can share with us, what is your memory and what brings you here?
Okay, my grandparents, the Feldmans, and from my mother's side, the Goldsteins, who were killed in the Holocaust, and also aunts and uncles, young people, and most of their family was left behind, and they were killed. You know, we don't know. They went to Treblinka, somebody said, and of course nobody survived from Treblinka.
They say when we don't learn from history, we are bound to repeat it. In that sense, this center has a message for the entire humanity. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays his respects for the victims of the Nazi Holocaust, it would be a poignant moment for the civilizational ties between India and Israel. With camera person Jaishankar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in Jerusalem. We are at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem.
So that was our correspondent visiting the Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. And in fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his previous visit to Israel in 2017, had also visited the Remembrance Center, where he signed the guest book. And if I could just read out what Prime Minister Modi wrote in the guest book in 2017, I'm deeply moved by my visit to Yad Vashem. It's as much a poignant reminder of the unspeakable evil inflicted generations ago as it is a symbol of endurance and fortitude of Jewish people. As we deal with conflict, intolerance, hatred, terror in our time, Yad Vashem serves as a mirror to society around the world. May we not forget the injustices of the past and its devastating toll on humanity, and remembering the past, we may empower our children to make them compassionate, just, righteous choices for their future. Yes, as we all are struggling with conflicts, Russia-Ukraine conflict has finished 4 years, and of course Israel-Hamas conflict still in a relatively peaceful state for now, but we don't know what happens in future. A poignant reminder, the Holocaust, in fact a mirror to society, as Prime Minister says, around the world.
Yes, and Israel has that sense that it was persecuted then, and there are still attempts to persecute it, Tanvi. That is what Israel has also talked about in the context of what happened on the 7th of October, conflict which is now, of course, not raging anymore, but again, the peace process needs to go forward to ensure that there is a proper solution to this, these differences that led to extreme violence of such a nature that a war ensued.
Yes. If I could come to our guests, yes, our approach to terrorism, both India and Israel, we have a commonality there. Do you think our views on terrorism also bring us together, that double standards on terrorism and, what do you say, for some they are freedom fighters, but this double standard can't be equated at the same time. Terrorism has to be defined is what India also says very frequently at different international fora.
I think almost all of us are in agreement that terrorism is a scourge of mankind. And this is one of those activities that should not be tolerated, and it should be dealt with very firmly. We have shown greater resolve in recent years in dealing with instances of terrorism against our space and our people. And I think what we do see is that Israel has done likewise. There is also another aspect of it, because not everything has a military solution, because not all aspects of a so-called terror movement can be clubbed to all the people. And therefore, there is a scope for diplomacy, for negotiations. And we have also urged that in the various instances. For instance, in the most recent instance where we saw the attack by the Hamas and Islamic Jihad and some other factions of Palestinians and others on the 7th of October, it was not something that was of all Palestinian people. And therefore, while action needs to be and was taken against the Hamas, it was also at the same time necessary to have channels open so that a solution could be found through diplomatic means. So that the younger generation would have a certain line and a hope, a little bit of ray of light at the end of the tunnel that they could look forward to. Because if that doesn't happen, then the perpetuation of violence and terrorism continues. There can be no justification for violence, of course. But I think these two need to go in tandem. And I'm so happy that in some ways today, when we have a pause in Gaza, we are trying to see this other approach of diplomacy and reconstruction and negotiation to bring about a certain understanding. At the end of the day, I think, and Prime Minister Modi has also said something likewise, that this is not the age for war. And we need to have this understanding in the 21st century that we need to have more negotiated settlements that bear in mind human dignity and the aspirations of all the people. I think there is great commonality in our approach today.
Right. Now, Professor Rintuja, one way to combat terror is to cut off its means of finance. And that is something that India and Israel have also been doing together for quite some time on information sharing. And in this financial domain, there is also talk of increasing cooperation in financial areas altogether, especially where cross-border payments are involved for trade and other purposes, transferring money transfers, in fact, as well, the infrastructure that is required for that purpose. Do you think that there is a lot of scope there as well to both ensure that A, it facilitates business and commerce between the countries, and B, it combats terror as well?
Sorry. Yeah, the financial sector is one area where, again, we will be seeing a lot more coordination. I mentioned in one of my remarks that it is very promising to see that we have already signed the bilateral investment treaty last year. So when we are looking at FTAs and more financial cooperation or trade partnerships, which also means that economic partnerships will be growing. But at the same time, rightly mentioned by you, that one of the ways to really put the checks and balances on the activities of these elements, the terror elements, or who would like to fund this sort of an activity, both in Israel or in India, we would have to strengthen our partnerships in this particular field, operational collaboration, to ensure that we really are able to fend the activities being carried out by these nefarious personalities to fund and carry out these attacks in both the respective territories. That's when our coordination in the cyber domain would also play a very important role. Information sharing, something which we are doing very, very robustly. Intelligence sharing, information sharing, human, tech-in, SecTin, whatever that you can think of, will be all required to ensure that this system of money laundering or terror financing should really be uprooted from both the territories. And also, this is the reason why India has been calling for a lot more reforms and a lot more activities at the institutional levels in various platforms to ensure that this practice, a very pernicious practice of money laundering and terror financing, should be really put to rest. But so in this particular visit, the counterterrorism or security cooperation will definitely be given a high priority. And in that, this aspect that you mentioned about terror financing, money laundering will come into picture.
Okay. Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, agriculture and water management have been subjects in which India and Israel have worked very closely in the past. What aspects of these subjects could figure this time in talks between the two leaders?
These are two areas in which we've made good progress. These are not at the very initial stage because they began a few years ago, and in the days that have gone by, we've been able to establish, not only identify areas where we should work, but even build centers where we conduct these activities. One of the key things that we learned from the Israeli experience is that water is becoming a relatively scarce commodity. In fact, some people say that this is the next gold, and we need to conserve it properly, use it properly. And so wasteland water management, and we have a number of projects in central India, in the Badlands of the Chambals and so on, where we are running these projects. We are trying to learn from each other's experiences, blending it in the Indian instance with a lot of our traditional crafts and traditional knowledge about water management and how you can have sustainable flows. So that has been a good exercise. A related thing which spills over into agriculture is the drip irrigation technologies, which incidentally, there's a very active Indian family, which is in collaboration with Israel and Israeli families and scientists, which is actually a market leader globally in the field of drip irrigation. So that is an active area in which both of us have worked together, and it not only conserves the resource better, but it also then provides us the opportunity to get into new areas. For instance, who would have thought of strawberries in the middle of India and things like that. The other one on which we've actually been working very closely, and this is again this is really a two-way thing, is looking at high-yielding varieties, specialized crops, collaboration not only in agriculture, but also in some of the dairy aspects and the processing aspects, moving up the cold chain in the agriculture sector. We started off with the center in Karnal, and it's kind of expanded further within the country. And this has been a very, very useful process, because what it does at the end of the day is that it gives better purchasing power to the farmer on the land. And at the end of the day, if development is our key priority, and part of it is to have greater citizen empowerment at the grassroots level, there's no better way than to provide this next generation of agricultural revolution. We had the Green Revolution earlier, and this is the next generation, which is built on science and technology to drive new crops, better yields, and higher farmer income. So India and Israel are very strong partners, and I think this is an area that will continue to develop.
Right, and Professor Niktujam, if I could ask you about another area where India wants to see a spurt in growth in economic activity is its burgeoning MSME sector as well. Israel too has some of these capabilities which can be perhaps there can be some sort of a collaboration there. What kind of progress has that seen so far, and what more are the possibilities there?
I think these are some areas which have gotten some sort of a push in the last few years. We have been really, for the fact that, the FTA discussions have been going on for quite a while, also signals that there are certain sticking points between the two countries. But in the last few years, there has been some very strong momentum in terms of our negotiations by looking at the opportunities both the countries are opening up to almost all the sectors, including the one that you just mentioned, MSMEs. Israel also has a very growing, presence in this particular domain. So are the cases in India also. So this is something which, I believe, and I firmly believe that these are certain areas which have been, discussed since the last couple of years, particularly when we really strengthened this discussion on bilateral investment treaty and also the way how we are looking at signing the FTA. This has to be encapsulated. This has to be taken into consideration, the kind of a potential, in this field. So the fact that economic partnership has become another important, mainstays of India's relationship in itself is a very promising aspect of the bilateral relationship. Earlier, it was mostly being seen, or India was mostly being seen as a mere market for Israeli products or for some of its, items. Similar was the case with us. But with the way how things are shaping up, political partnerships getting a lot more strengthened and robust, I think this will be another very important area within the framework of economic collaboration between the two sides.
Okay. Would Ambassador Sanjay, would India have to do a tough balancing act here when it comes to the tensions between Washington and Tehran, especially India's interests in the Chabahar port as well? Because, of course, right now, as things stand, West Asia is on the brink of a conflict as Trump every day threatens to bombard Iran in case they don't reach a deal with Washington.
I think the reality of the world is that these tendencies and these pronouncements do impose a certain level of constraint. India is inclined to having independent and growing relations, cooperative relations with all countries in the world. But the reality of the world, as I said, is sometimes different. So for us, the North-South corridor, which goes through Chabahar, is extremely important, not only because it provides a certain level of connectivity to Central Asia and beyond, it also connects us to Afghanistan, which is an important partner as well. And what we do need to understand is that given the level of tensions that there are in the region, if there were to be conflict and if Bandar Abbas were to be kind of in a difficult situation, then the Strait of Hormuz could become a choke point. And we need avenues that go beyond. Besides, of course, that we do know that Bandar Abbas does have certain limitations. Although it's a great port, it has certain limitations. And therefore, Chabahar should actually be developed. It is for this reason that we also wanted to develop the IMEC in a manner in which it would also have multiple nodes. And in some ways, it connects with the earlier question that you had about MSME development. Because when you do have multiple connectivity points, you do provide greater opportunities to business. And very often, as we know, investments follow trade. So if you have a BIT, an investment treaty, and then you have an FTA, then it is quite natural that the kind of economic engagement will develop. And that is often the magic towards changing society much more than perhaps sending a bunch of ships across and trying to hammer them out. So there are other ways, and I think Prime Minister has often articulated this when he says that this is not the era for war, but really for diplomacy and cooperation. And in some ways, the Indian way, which is what is sometimes talked about, once that gains greater currency, we will see that emerging powers like us, and there are many in West Asia as well, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it is Israel, and then our voice will then become much more heard. So I do hope that this current period of tension eases at the earliest. I'm glad that they are having negotiations, and even if they haven't reached a conclusion, the fact that they are continuing is a positive sign.
Yes, and to what extent do you think this sort of message that Prime Minister Modi has always put out in the world, especially when it's a question of conflicts, not in an era of war, was in the context of Ukraine. It is not war yet in the region, but it said that it's on the brink of war. Anytime it could break out, even while peace is being negotiated, talked about. To what extent can Prime Minister Modi stress with Benjamin Netanyahu himself that this is something that is extremely desirable at the moment?
Well, I think they've had many consultations over the last several years, particularly in the last couple of years, ever since that terrible attack on the 7th of October. And I think they understand the position that Prime Minister Modi has and the merit in that as well. But you must understand at the same time that countries often have to take the decisions themselves about how they deal with state security and their citizen interests. And in such cases, those who are on the ground may, in a sense, have a somewhat blinkered view, but at the same time, they're on the ground and they're facing the real aspects of it. So sometimes their judgment also has to be respected. But I do hope, and the current level of understanding with the Gaza and the Palestinians is something that's holding. We see that the Board of Peace has had its initial exchanges. We'll have to see how far it kind of follows the Security Council mandate and its implementation, and how many of the partners actually come in and join the process so that they can help the process towards peace. So, I often feel that what Prime Minister Modi often refers to as not the age for war, it's not just hot war, it's also the threat of use of force that is extremely important. And so I think it's important to note that in addition to the two areas which saw hot conflict in Ukraine and West Asia, there is actually a very tense situation in the South China Sea and in the regions around China. So the use of threat of force is sometimes as compelling, and therefore needs to be that needs to stop as well. We face similar tensions as well. So that particular logic should go a little further to the use of threat of force as well.
Yes, and in fact also respect for one's sovereignty and international law. Dr. Alvite, yes, India was one of the countries that actually condemned Israel's expansion into the West Bank very recently. So should we say that India is no longer a distant player in this dynamic sort of an evolving West Asia geopolitics? It's an active participant where all these points that Ambassador just mentioned should be respected. Respect for, international law, one's sovereignty, and of course at the same time not using threat of force to reiterate one's point.
I think this is a very important point which Sir mentioned, and the question that you just asked me. I think we have been very convincing, making very clear to not only to the regional players but also to the Israel that there should be certain, you should abide by the certain international law. And this also is a reflection that we are gaining a little bit of a confidence in dealing with some of these very sensitive issues which are happening in West Asia. So that is also one of the reasons why it is very important for India to not only strengthen the partnerships on the bilateral scale or bilaterally, but it is also very important that we continuously engage with all the multiple stakeholders in the region. So the fact that we have been able to organize the first and the second ministerial meetings, one was in Saudi Arabia in 2024, the India GCC Ministerial Summit, and then we also discussed the similar issues of the Palestinian issue in January in January this year in the form of India Arab leaders meeting, where we conveyed some of our positions on the long-standing unresolved Israeli-Palestinian issue, which in a way signals that we are gradually getting into that realms of engaging with some of the regional players vis-a-vis the regional affairs. And again, when we look at the Israeli-Palestinian issue, this is a very severe and a very serious issue, which will take some good number of years to come to some sort of a solution. There are 4 or 5 points that they have to really work out some solutions on. The question of Jerusalem as a capital, the border demarcation based on 1967, border lines, the problem of refugee, the law of return, security, water sharing. All of them are very sticking points, which both these sides have to really negotiate upon. But we giving that kind of a signal and being voting against some of the resolutions in support of the Palestinians is also a signal that we still haven't abandoned the Palestinian cause, which is still very much important part of our foreign policy vis-a-vis West Asia. So this is a very good, I would say, act of balancing, though some might come to an analysis that India has completely drifted apart from the Palestinian cause. But I think we have done fairly well, and we still have not, I would say that, have not reached that level where we can be in the driver's seat and take the regional affairs on our shoulder and try to moral police all the players in the region. We still haven't reached that stage, but gradually we are getting there.
Right. Ambassador Bhattacharya, let me also ask you, do you think in the deliberations between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu, Donald Trump will also figure somewhere in terms of not just his tariffs, which have been struck down by the US Supreme Court, but then he's announced 10 and 15% thereafter. I don't think the Israelis are very happy about that. They've had a free trade agreement with the US since 1985. I think one of the oldest free trade pacts that US has with any country. And the other is this looming larger than life presence in that entire region that Israel occupies, be it in the case of course, the Gaza process, the peace process, be it Iran, be it Syria, be it almost every other country.
Well, I shouldn't try to preempt what my Prime Minister will discuss with his counterpart, but I would be very surprised if the relations with the United States and the influence of the United States on global issues as well as regional issues in West Asia does not come up for discussion. Because after all, if you look at the world today, the kind of dominance that US has on so many of the geopolitical and geoeconomic issues is something that we all need to consult on. Both of us are very strong partners of the United States. For both of us, the relations with the United States is one of greatest consequence. And therefore, we have also all collaborated together. The I2U2 process, for instance, is something which brings the two of us directly with the United States as well. We have various formats in which we have these discussions. So if you look at the world today, the US presence on tariffs, on security, is something that we'd all need to collaborate and exchange notes on. We will all have to find our own solutions which kind of accord with our realities and our aspirations vis-a-vis the American side and its expectations. So I'm sure they will have these discussions, but we may have slightly differing perspectives about how they impact on each of us.
Okay, Dr. Alvite, in your assessment, what are the global issues of mutual interest that Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu may discuss?
All right, the regional issues would be, of course, the larger security dynamics of West Asia that involves particularly the Gaza crisis, reconstruction, and at the same time, these growing tensions between Iran and the US. So this would be really, a discussion that would have some sort of a space in that when they deliberate upon the regional or the international issues. I think I would, when it comes to, apart from the other good things that they will be discussing about the prospects and the opportunities in terms of cooperation, we have been discussing for the last 2 hours, various kinds of areas, various avenues where things might see more improvement in the times to come. But when it comes to some of the pressing issues, the issue of terrorism would be very much high on the agenda of discussion. The issues of Gaza Strip and the reconstruction and the ceasefire would be something which both the prime ministers would also be deliberating upon. And the looming tension or the growing tensions in the Red Sea region, particularly between US and Iran. But at the same time, there will also be, like Ambassador Sir also has been talking about, some sort of a regional arrangement, to have more integrated approach. But of course, the focus would be very much on bilateral.
Right, again, I'd like you to venture a guess about whether Ambassador Bhattacharya, even China could figure in the talks as well, because China, certain steps that it has taken in the recent past, especially in the context of critical minerals, rare earths. Do you feel that is something that is a pinch that Israel would also be feeling? India's felt it definitely, as have many other countries in the world, and that is only one aspect that could come up as far as the entire role of China in this complicated situation that the world finds itself in is concerned.
I think you're absolutely spot on. Just as we cannot not talk about the United States, we cannot not talk about China. The growing presence of China in the region is something that is both positive as well as one that needs to be watched. It's positive because its BRI initiative has actually led to greater connectivity options and also helped economic growth and supported employment and earnings in many parts of of the West Asia region. It is at the same time of concern because very often China tends to weaponize many of these assets that are actually meant for common good, and therefore they raise certain red flags. In particular, one must also note that China's position on the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, and particularly between Israel and Hamas, has been somewhat very different from that of even the Arab states. And China's level of disapproval has been quite high in this particular instance. What that indicates is that they support a different kind of an option set in terms of the final settlement, so to say. Not that the final settlement is around the corner, but they do seem to support a very different kind of set. And in some ways, there is therefore this very big distinction between the Chinese approach to the resolution of the core issues in West Asia and our approach, the Indian approach. Whereas we want negotiated settlements between the parties to come to an understanding, and then whether it has to be, the 67 border or something else, whether it has to be, how they divide Jerusalem, all those issues should be up for discussion. Whereas the Chinese are much more set, and in some ways that is similar to the Arab position on their Arab resolution, which had come out of Cairo, more than 3 decades ago. But it still continues to hold ground. And therefore, this particular aspect will be discussed. Today, what we do find is that in many of the areas where, as we move into the digital age, the issue of critical minerals and critical technologies has become very, very obvious and strong. And there is a certain kind of a pushback on both sides. So on the one hand, you have Western technology denial towards the Chinese, because in some of these areas, the West actually has an advantage. And at the same time, you find economic coercion being used by the Chinese side, because in terms of the access and refinement capacities of critical material, they have the edge. And so if both these are going to be weaponized, countries that are emerging, that depend on technology and would wish to use that for the future of our citizens, we need to have much more resilient supply chains. IMEC was one of those, to build that kind of a resilient supply chain. And so India and Israel, because both of us are today collaborating on many of the technology aspects, but we don't really have so much of the material, therefore find greater synergy in terms of the third party and third country partnerships that we develop. As you know, we together with the Emiratis and some others have various projects in different parts of the world as well. And so some of these will see greater momentum so that we can have those reliable and resilient both value chains as well as supply chains.
All right. India's ambassador to Israel, Mr. J.P. Singh, has described Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Israel as historic, and he has said that the time has come to build on the strategic partnership and take it to a new phase. Let's now listen in to an exclusive interview of India's ambassador to Israel, J.P. Singh.
Ambassador, if we talk about the areas of engagement, we understand that defense and security is like a cornerstone of this partnership. Late last year, an agreement was also signed on co-production of advanced technologies. What can we expect during Prime Minister's visit?
The best thing about India and Israel are that we don't compete with each other. Rather, we complement each other. And we complement in our core strengths. Israel's core strength is in science and technology, innovation, critical and emerging technologies, be it AI, be it cybersecurity, quantum. And similarly, our core strength is huge kind of engineers, skilled manpower, and there's an ecosystem in India where we can scale it up in sense. So the idea during this visit will be how we can combine these two ecosystems so that both the countries can benefit out of it. So science and technology will be a core area of focus in this particular technology. The other core areas includes our cooperation in agriculture, water technology, workforce, defense and security cooperation, as you mentioned. And in defense, last year we signed a memorandum of understanding in defense cooperation. And there is already going on cooperation, defense. We have a Make in India program. Under the Make in India program, many Israeli companies are participating. And the idea is how, both countries can benefit from this cooperation.
And what can one expect in the domain of trade and connectivity? There is this IMEC corridor of which Israel happens to be a very important part. But what progress can we expect in this engagement?
I think this is one area where there will be discussion during this visit, how to improve trade and commerce. And when we say trade and commerce, last year our Commerce and Industry Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, also visited Israel. During that visit, we signed, he came along with a very big delegation, around 70-member business delegation, CO and, business forum meetings took place. During that visit, both the countries signed the terms of reference for free trade agreement. And I think during this visit, both the Prime Minister are going to set a roadmap, a target, how to sign free trade agreement at the earliest possible.
Right. And finally, Ambassador, we understand India and Israel share civilizational links with one another. As far as taking forward people-to-people linkages in the 21st century is concerned, what steps could be taken?
India and Israel, people-to-people cultural relations are already very good. Unlike many other parts of the world, in India you won't find any anti-Semitism activity, which we are proud of. India believes in philosophy of coexistence, believe in philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and as Prime Minister says, that world is one family. World is one family. In that spirit, I think we are already doing a lot on improving our people-to-people and cultural relations. We have an Indian Cultural Center in Tel Aviv, under which we organize many film festivals. A number of cultural troops come here. The tourism from Israel to India is picking up. So we are moving in the right direction. And maybe, many agreements will be signed during this visit, and you will see some agreements in this field also.
Ambassador Singh, on that note, thank you for speaking with DD India. That was India's ambassador to Israel, talking about the expectations from Prime Minister Modi's upcoming visit to Jerusalem. With camera person Anand Kumar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in Jerusalem.
Well, alongside Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel, the first round of negotiations for the India-Israel Free Trade Agreement has been underway in New Delhi, scheduled to take place till the 26th of February, that's till Thursday. The terms of reference were signed in November 2025, as mentioned by the ambassador as well, which established a structured framework for discussions on identified areas to enhance trade and economic cooperation.
Total merchandise trade, we have told you, between the two countries stood at $3.62 billion in fiscal year 2024-25. India and Israel share complementarities across several sectors, and the FTA will be a catalyst to further enhance the bilateral trade by providing certainty and predictability to businesses, including the micro, small and medium enterprises.
Now, during this round, technical experts from both the sides are engaging in sessions covering various aspects of the FTA. This engagement highlights the strategic importance of India-Israel bilateral relationship and reinforces India's commitment to strengthen economic partnerships in line with national priorities and global aspirations.
Both sides are working towards concluding a balanced and mutually beneficial free trade agreement. So these negotiations continuing in New Delhi just as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Israel.
And what also took place earlier was the 10th meeting of India-Israel Joint Working Group on Counter-Terrorism, which was held on Tuesday in New Delhi.
The meeting underscored the importance of bilateral cooperation in countering terrorism, reflecting the spirit and breadth of the India-Israel strategic partnership. Both sides unequivocally strongly condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, including cross-border terrorism, and reaffirmed the principle of zero tolerance towards terrorism.
They also strongly condemned the brutal terror attacks in both the nations, including the heinous 7th of October 2023 terror attack in Israel, the dastardly terrorist attack in Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir in India on the 22nd of April in 2025, and other terror acts which have emphasized the urgent need to hold the perpetrators of these heinous acts accountable.
Both sides emphasized that confronting terrorism requires concerted action in a sustained and comprehensive manner. Against this backdrop, the two sides renewed their commitment to strengthening multilateral cooperation in the field of countering terrorism. The two sides reiterated their commitment also to cooperate in combating terrorism and terrorist organizations, as well as their proxies, supporters, sponsors, financiers and backers.
And both the sides also discussed ways to strengthen cooperation against challenges. They also discussed further strengthening law enforcement and judicial cooperation, including through information sharing and cooperation on mutual legal assistance requests.
So we are all standing by as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is now expected to head to Hotel King David, and he's expected to meet the diaspora members there, where, as we see in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's foreign trips, they organize a small reception for the Indian Prime Minister, and we are expecting a sizable Indian origin community at the event. So coming to our guests, final assessment there, let me go first to Dr. Alvite. What would you say is the most significant strategic objective of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's current visit to Israel?
I think the visit in itself is one of the most important, I would say, aspects of this visit. As I mentioned at the beginning of my introduction, that this was one of the most important missing links for a very long period of time. So you would need to give some sort of a political impetus to really harness the real potential of bilateral Indo-Israel relationship, something which we are doing right now. So in terms of now, since we have been talking a lot about different dynamics of bilateral partnerships as well as multilateral or trilateral, whatever that we have discussed would lend a good amount of support to the growth of the ties between the two countries, which is very, very important. It is very crucial. Israel is a very crucial country for us from the standpoint of security, technological partnership, and the non-traditional areas like agriculture, water management. These are something very, very important elements, particularly which are particularly important for India's economic progress and growth. So all these elements put together, and you have a discussion with the Prime Minister, and to come out with a lot more ideas and agreements and arrangements to really uplift the partnership, that in itself is a very important takeaway for this particular visit to Israel.
Right. But yes, go ahead. You were saying something?
So I would still say that, this political element of India-Israel partnership is very, very important, which was never the case until about the late 2000s or early 2000s.
Right. Ambassador Bhattacharya, if I could also ask you, there have been changing perspectives in terms of seeing the India-Israel relationship through the decades. At one time, we were thought to be keeping our distance from Israel. Then we were sort of tacitly getting closer together. Then it came out in the open, and the relationship has progressed from there quite rapidly. Do you feel that there is scope to now give further impetus in areas that still remain? I mean, is there still something that remains unexplored where India and Israel are concerned?
Yes, absolutely. I think, in my opinion, this is a relationship which has matured over a period of time. And it has matured in the most desirable manner because it has been to the benefit of both sides. And both Israel and India have been able to add new content to this as time goes on to expand both the spread as well as the depth of our partnership. The second feature of this is that this is really embedded in trust and confidence. We both believe that we are for each other, and we prove it on the ground when it comes to the crunch point. So there is that great comfort level that is very, very important. The third is that we've always been future-oriented because in some ways, we are very similar people in terms of our civilizational experience, where we have always pursued this plurality, this excellence, and being meaningful to the communities around us. And so that is something that has played at the back of the of our minds as we have advanced this particular relationship. And if anything has held it back, it's been issues like terrorism coming from outside, the absence of peace and stability in our regions, and they have been the dark clouds. And so, for instance, when Sindoor happened, we were able to deal with it, in 4 days, and then go back to business, which was principally to just get back to the job of development for our people. But, we've not seen a similar kind of move in West Asia. And it's not just about what's happened in Gaza, but, in the broader framework, the kind of antagonism and misbelief that is there amongst various factors has been much more deep-rooted. So I think where we are now standing on the threshold and what can be the new areas is, I think there are areas which are again, technology-driven, where we can get into, for instance, our collaboration in cyber, in space, in some of the defense areas, the collaboration between our young people. These are some of the areas which are quite obvious on the bilateral front that we would certainly wish to make more progress on and cover new ground. But I think this is the time that India and Israel work together, along with the partners in the region, towards having a regional initiative in which India can contribute to the efforts of the players on the ground towards having tangible stability and peace, so that prosperity, which is for the benefit of everybody, not just in the region, but for us and Europe and America, can then reach its fullest level.
Well, certainly, and let's see which sort of a direction the two leaders give to the relationship, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu, when they engage in official talks as well. We will learn of the outcomes too, and that historic address to the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, will also follow very soon. Right now, of course, we're waiting on the community reception that the Prime Minister will be getting on his second visit to Israel. At this point, I'll have to thank both of you, Ambassador Bhattacharya as well as Professor Autujum, and thank you so much for joining us to talk about India-Israel ties and, of course, the regional dynamics as well. One can't really talk about these two nations without speaking about the regional dynamics that are playing out and have been playing out in the region for quite some time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes,
Thank you.
Yes. India is the largest democracy of the world. Israel, as they say, is the only democracy in West Asia, but nonetheless, India and Israel are partners in this progress. And that's all in this broadcast. News and updates continue on DD India.